Well, welcome to a very special edition of the Bully Pulpit Show. I'm Mark Joseph, your navigator through these trying interviews that we have sometimes. But today is not a trying interview, and it's a total conflict of interest interview, too, because the Bully Pulpit Show is welcoming our first artist on Bully Pulpit Records by the name of Molly Jenson. Molly, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to try our best to conduct this interview, even though we work together on the record. I'm going to be totally objective.
And we know each other
and
already.
Talk about your record and be very critical of it, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm ready.
So, well, Molly, tell me first, when we met a couple of years ago, you've been recording before that for many years. So tell me about how you got started sort of making music before this record came out.
Well, I grew up singing. I was singing ever since I was a little kid, so I've always been doing that. And I grew up playing piano, and I was in choir in high school, and I was in musicals. And I bought a guitar when I was 18 and taught myself how to play and just played as much as I could. And every time I would play with friends, and I'd learn more chords, and I just kept learning like that. And it wasn't until about 5 years ago I got a call from a friend. And I didn't know him very well, but we had other mutual friends, and he just called and said, hey, I'd love to work with you. And I'd kind of been writing a little bit, but not really, and nothing great was really coming out of me. And so we met, and we wrote a song in our first meeting, and then we recorded it the next time we met, and then we met again and wrote another song, and then recorded that song, and then I had a record.
And this is Greg Lasswell.
Yes, Greg Lasswell.
Who is a recording artist in his own right.
Yeah, yeah.
Tours around the country.
Right.
Has a huge following.
Blowing up.
Now, did you skip over gals in this introduction of your musical history? Because I think you should tell the audience what gals.
Not purposefully. Yeah, I was in a band when I was 12 called Gals, and it stood for Get a Life Sista. Sista, not sister. And that was like my first experience of being in a band. And I think we met twice, and we had 2 songs. But I sang the lead vocals on like our main song called Get a Life. And yeah, I think that was when I knew I could sing. At 12, I was like, I think I can sing. And that's kind of how it started.
And then John Foreman, I think, of Switchfoot also played a role in your musical development. What was that about?
Yeah, you know, I'd been friends with Switchfoot. I'd known those guys for a long time. I worked for them for a while. And I started working on my own stuff, and I would send John some tracks and some of the other guys some tracks and get their feedback. And they gave great feedback. And then after my project was done and I was starting to play shows around, I think John started hearing my name more. Even though we were friends, you know, I worked for them, so it was a different level. And I think he just started hearing my name around a little bit more through mutual friends. And then he heard my music and then called me one day and just asked if I wanted to write. And I was like, yes. But I didn't really think he was serious, so I just kind of was like, yeah, totally. And then forgot about it. And then a couple weeks later, he called me again. He's like, let's write. When are we going to write? And so we wrote, and we've written 3 songs. We've met 3 times and written 3 songs. And one of the songs is on my record. It's a duet that we wrote, the first song we wrote. And then another song we wrote really like in 30 minutes really quick and recorded it really quick. And that's on one of his EPs, his spring EP. And we have another song that maybe will be on my next record.
Now, you were working with John, as you said, on the website and different things. But he obviously knew that you had played music before, had been in bands and things, right?
Yeah, he knew I had done some music, but he'd never really heard anything, and I don't think I would have wanted to show him anything I'd done beforehand, before I'd done my own stuff. So I think he knew that I could sing and that I was involved in music, but he needed to hear my own stuff, you know, the own stuff that I was working on. So
what did you do for the bands? What exactly were you working on?
Well, I worked for a company. Well, I first originally started working for Switchfoot for their online store. I knew a guy who was in charge, like ran their online store, made their online store. He's a total tech guy, and was kind of overwhelmed with all the stuff going on, and all like they were starting to get a little bit bigger, and they were getting more orders, and so basically he would ship out orders for people and take care of customer service, get back to people whenever they had questions about their online orders. And he was just getting overwhelmed, and I had just moved back to San Diego, and I needed a job, and so I started working with him, and I had been doing music, you know, enough to know what it's like not to get your merch on the road. And so I started helping him and took over all the customer service. I started Switchfoot Street Team, and was just involved in all of them, you know, signing on to Sony and kind of blowing up. And then Switchfoot had an idea of starting a company that just worked with San Diego bands, because they had a lot of people asking them where they got their merch and where they, you know, how do you sell it and blah, blah, blah. And so we started Band Farm, and I was kind of just there for the ride. I didn't really have much say in it, I just was there. And we started Band Farm, and it turned out to be like we have all sorts of bands all over the country. So it's not just a San Diego thing, but I worked with Switchfoot and Band Farm for 5 years, and I still work for them, part-time, really part-time, but I do contracting, you know, independent contracting things every once in a while.
So you're totally covered on the merch front as far as your career.
I'm covered on the merch front. I know where to get my merch. I know the wholesale prices of things. I know, you know, the right websites to go to. So.
Didn't you used to also model Switchfoot gear?
Yeah, the girls' shirts I would wear.
You didn't get paid for that extra. That was just like part of the.
No, I was just there.
Part of the gig.
Yeah, I just was there.
So let's go back to your early years. So you moved around a lot. I think you went to a lot of schools, right?
Yeah, you know, we didn't move. My family didn't move around a lot. I lived in 3 different places growing up till I got out of high school. And the first, I mean, I was born in Philadelphia, and then immediately we moved to San Bernardino, and then I lived there till I was 7, and then we moved to San Diego, and then I was there till I graduated high school and went to college in San Diego for a couple of years, and then I left. And from that year on, I didn't live anywhere longer than a year for almost my entire life since then. I think the longest I've lived anywhere is 1.5 years, maybe 2 years, since high school. So it's been crazy. And I think for 3 years, I didn't live anywhere longer than 3 months. So I kind of have this like hippie-ish side of me, kind of a roamer. Yeah, a little nomad. I love it. I love traveling. I love living different places. I went to school in England for a little while, and I lived up in the Bay Area, and I lived in Arizona for a little bit of time, and I was on tour with the band for a year, and you know, we were in a different state every day. And growing up, I think that comes from growing up. I went to a lot of different schools, even though I didn't live a lot of different places. I went to 8 schools before I got to high school.
Were you just getting kicked out every place you went?
Yeah, I was a really naughty kid.
You've got to explain 8 schools.
I know, that's a lot, huh?
How does that happen?
I just went to all sorts of different schools, and I went to private schools, I went to public schools, I was homeschooled for part of my life, so it was just like there are a couple schools that I hated. I will not say them on camera, but I did hate a couple of schools I went to, and my mom was just like, all right, you don't have to go there. So she would move me to another school, and yeah, I just kind of grew up all over the place.
Now, did you have a hard time making friends at each of these
No, I'm really
places?
good with strangers. I've found that I'm super good like making new friends, and I'm really good with strangers. It's keeping friends that's always a little hard for me. Staying like connected with people over a course of time. It has really been a struggle for me. It's been something that I've had to really work at. I have a couple really close friends that I see on a regular basis, but I have friends all over the world just from traveling that when I see, it's like it hasn't been a long time. You know, like we catch up, and I feel like it hasn't been a year since I've seen them. You know, like we have that kind of relationship where you can just immediately connect again. But I've got that all over, not just next to me all the time.
And your family was kind of a musical family growing up, right?
Yeah, my dad, my mom and my dad met in choir, and then once they got married, they traveled. My dad was doing his doctorate and traveling around the country in a motorhome with another couple, my mom, my dad, and another couple, and he was interviewing top leaders around the country and for his doctorate. And the way they made money was by singing in a quartet around.
Like folk music or something?
Yeah.
Were you traveling with them during this time?
No.
This was before you were born.
I wasn't alive yet. I had not entered the scene. But,
so your parents are like 60s folk, like folk rock. Were they hippies? Like, was he like have long hair?
No, they weren't hippies. They kind of were,
Peter, Paul, and Mary vibe?
Yes, absolutely. Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Interesting.
So not full-on hippies, but definitely had like hippie kind of style.
So your dad's looking back on you going, now, well, of course she's a musician, because I was a musician, and my wife was a
So
musician.
funny. And the sad thing about it is that neither one of them have really kept it up. Like my dad keeps it up at church. When we go to church as a family, he'll be the loudest person in there singing. And so he keeps it up that way. But my mom doesn't keep it up, so she can't really sing anymore. And she says that. She'll be like, I can't sing, I've lost my voice. Don't ever lose your voice. She tells me that on a regular basis. But my brother grew up playing jazz piano. He's an amazing jazz pianist. And I don't think any of us really thought, maybe my parents thought I'd be an entertainer because I was always showing off and putting on plays and, you know, when I was growing up. But I never thought I would be a singer, ever. And I think that's mostly because I'm just kind of hard on myself, and I never thought I was good enough. I never thought I'd be good enough to play guitar in front of people, and I never thought I'd be good enough to sing or write my own songs. And it took me a long time to get to the point in my life, and just as an individual to be confident enough in that, and confident enough in believing that this is something that I'm meant to do, and this is something that I'm good at and I can do. And that's even hard for me to say a little bit right now, but like it's just, I'm getting more used to that and being like, wow, this is really real. I'm a musician.
It is. Well, hold on one second. We'll come back in just a moment with our guest, Molly Jenson. Stay tuned.
For the first time, the ability to turn back the clock hands of biological time has recently been demonstrated in a human being. The prospect of being able to become biologically young again is tantalizing. A new 8-minute film explores this new discovery.
And we're back on the Bully Pulpit Show with Bully Pulpit Records and Network Music Group recording artist Molly Jenson. So Molly, we were talking about your childhood, and I've met your father before. I haven't met your mother yet. I'm looking forward to meeting her.
Are you kidding me?
We're going to have dinner sometime soon.
Oh my gosh, can't believe you haven't met my mom.
We're Facebook friends.
Have you met my brother?
I've met your brother.
Okay, good.
Your brother's a very nice guy, but I'm Facebook friends with your mom, so I feel like I'm her friend.
Yes.
But your dad is like an author. He's written these books on success. I have a book at home, like Authentic Success, I think it's called. He's written tons. He's like a life coach.
Achieving Authentic Success.
Achieving Authentic
right.
Success.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Ron. But he's a life coach.
Yeah.
So basically, like if I wanted my life to go better, I would go to him and he would consult and help me become a better person, be more successful.
Yes.
He does this for Fortune 500 companies, for like foreign governments too, right?
Yeah, all over the world.
So all this to say that your dad, you have a very healthy family. But doesn't great art come from dysfunction? Like, shouldn't you have come from a dysfunctional family
Probably.
to produce great art?
I create a lot of dysfunction in my life.
So you've acquired it along the way.
No. Yeah, you know, a lot of people say that. I feel like I'm a very different musician than most musicians. I'm not a typical musician. I don't feel like if I didn't do music, I would collapse and die. Like, I don't need to be listening to music all the time and playing music all the time. I love it, and that's what I want to be doing. But it's not, I'm definitely not one of those musicians that like everything is really dramatic and everything is like there's a story behind it all, and I'm not very emotional, and I'm just kind of not your typical musician. And in saying that, I don't have a lot of drama in my life. I don't feel, definitely not growing up. I have a very stable, great family. I mean, obviously we have our issues, but we're very close and we love each other, and we all work very hard at, you know, having a good relationship. But I've found, I mean, obviously one of like the fastest songs that ever came out of me writing-wise was right in the middle of a horrible breakup. So like definitely that tragedy helps for sure. But I found that you don't need it to be able to create. Maybe it helps a lot of other people, but I don't feel like it's something that's necessary. And it makes me a little sad when I know that artists or like young people getting into music think that they can only pull from the pain. I really love to pull from joy and happiness and good things. When my life's going good, I'm motivated to write. And yeah, I mean, it's not just all the pain and sorrow that we need to pull from.
So what do you think your parents contributed to you, both musically and just in the things that you write about? Do you see traces of them in the things you do in your work?
I think as far as musically, they've just always been really supportive. So like if I wanted to, like I played violin for a little while and I played clarinet for a little while, and they just were supportive. Like I would get sick of one thing and they'd be like, okay, let's move to something else. And I appreciate that about them, that they've been supportive to let me kind of try all sorts of different things, and that freedom has given me more freedom in being able to do music the way I want to do music. So that's been really helpful. And like I have a song, as far as like seeing them, like their traces in my songs, the first song on my album, which is also my single, ding ding ding, is called Give It Time, and it's about not running away from problems. And that is a huge thing that I learned from my parents growing up. You know, something would come up and they would always really be motivating me, just don't run away from it, deal with it right away, don't go to bed until you've dealt with it, you know, like deal with it as fast as you can and as well as you can. And that's what Give It Time is about. That I was having money issues when I was working on the record and I wanted to run away and I couldn't, so I was like, shoot, I better write a song about it. And writing the song helped me get through it.
This record, we'll talk about that in a second, but what was Greg Lasswell's contribution as the producer? How much of it is, I don't want to say much of it is him, but how much influence did he have on you and the songwriting and the production, and how would it be different if you hadn't worked with him, let's say?
Well, I think it would be really different. I honestly believe, and I don't want to sound like I'm not giving myself any credit, but I honestly believe that I wouldn't be here where I'm at in this musical spot if it weren't for Greg.
So if it wasn't for Greg, we wouldn't be sitting here right now.
Right. I don't believe we would be sitting here if Greg were not in the picture. And I could be wrong. Maybe things would have worked out a different way. But he, you know, we knew each other. We went to college together, and we knew each other in college, but just barely. And we had this mutual friend, and I had been kind of trying to write, and this guy called him and was like, hey, Molly, remember Molly from college? She's, you know, trying to work on something and needs some help. And he was producing at that time and wasn't really doing much of his own stuff. Like on the side, he was doing his own stuff, but not much. And he had produced a girl. It was the first record he had produced, this girl, Amy Ayers, I think was her name. And he really liked it. He liked writing with a girl, and he liked producing music for a girl. And so he called me, and we met, and it was just like this immediate connection. And so basically what would happen is I would go to him, and I had just moved from San Diego to Orange County at the time, and he was based in San Diego. So I drove down once a week to meet with him to write. And we would meet, and I would either have a song ready, like maybe part of a song written, and we would go through it, or I'd have most of a song written, which was not often the case, and he would kind of help me finish it. A lot of times I'd go in and I'd be like, I have no idea where to go. And we would just start talking. And he'd be like, well, what happened to you this week? And what's been bothering you? Or what have you noticed around you? And he just was really good at teaching me how to think musically and how to think poetically and in a writing manner. And and he's such an amazing lyricist. And I needed that. You know, I didn't grow up listening to a lot of music, and I wish I had. I wish I'd listened to all sorts of different kinds of music, but I didn't. And so because of that, it stunted me a little bit in my writing. And he taught me how to write and helped me how to write. So he and I co-wrote the majority of the record. There are a couple songs on there that he didn't write on. But he played almost all the instruments. We did it all, I probably shouldn't admit this, but we did it all on the keyboard. So all the drums were like real drums, but done on the keyboard. And like I think one song had like real bass and real violin on it, but everything else was like us on guitars or him on piano and keyboard. And I'd just sit there and he'd play something, he'd be like, how about this? And I'll be like, yeah, that's great, that's great. Or he'd play something else and be like, no, I don't like it, do something else. What about this? What about, you know, so that's kind of how we worked through it. So I mean, I I really don't think I'd be here if it weren't for him.
And I was thinking back on how we met. I had met your father, and he was talking about, my daughter's a singer, and I was like, yeah, all right, sure.
Yeah.
And then I had this friend named Betsy who kept like hounding me because she knew this label was starting, and she's like, you've got to hear Molly, you've got to hear Molly, and I was like, yeah, whatever. And then we met at a TV station we were working, but you never gave me your CD, or you don't really push your music on people. Almost like you're shy, not shy about it, but you're very reticent in a way.
Yeah.
And then finally, I think one day I asked for your CD, and you're like, here. And I remember driving up the 405, listening to it, going, and why isn't this person, famous or on the road or whatever? And
That's sweet.
That was, but it was, you were not a person who pushes your music on people, or maybe you're not a pushy person.
Yeah, I've met a lot of pushy people in this business, a lot, and I can't stand them, and I avoid them, and I don't ever want to be that person. And so with music, part of it is me not, I know that not everyone's going to love my music, and it's not everybody's perfect style, and so part of me is a little insecure about it, like, oh, you'll probably hate it, and another part of me is like, I just don't want to, I don't want to assume that you're going to love my music, so I don't want to push anything on you. So definitely that's kind of two feelings in that, but
yeah. And then we added, of course, down the road, we added a song to the material you already done called Do You Only Love the Ones Who Look Like You with John Foreman.
Yeah.
John actually didn't come. He actually flew his vocals in because he was on tour somewhere.
No,
I think.
he emailed them in.
He emailed them in.
Yeah, he wasn't even on tour. He was at home.
So he was just lazy.
Lazy.
John Foreman, you're just lazy.
Oh yeah, he just emailed them to me, and at first he did some things, and I was like, I don't like this, and I sent it back, and I was like, do it again. I don't like it, and I felt like silly because it's John Foreman, and like he had a lot, great success with his band Switchfoot and doing his own stuff, and but he did it. And
I think I was trying to make him look good. Like he was a busy rock star on the road.
Lazy.
And here you've exposed him as a lazy guy surfing in San Diego and didn't want to come up, drive an hour up the freeway.
No, he wanted to be with his wife.
Oh, okay.
He's on tour all the time. He needs to be with his wife, so.
All right.
I gave him that okay.
Okay, we'll come back in a moment with our next segment with recording artist Molly Jenson. Stay tuned.
For the first time, the ability to turn back the clock hands of biological time has recently been demonstrated in a human being. The prospect of being able to become biologically young again is tantalizing. A new 8-minute film explores this new discovery.
And we're back on the always exciting, sometimes entertaining Bully Pulpit show with our guest Molly Jenson, a Bully Pulpit recording artist and network. Did we already talk about that?
No,
I think we did.
Not really.
So you've talked about working with us and this label where we have Bully Pulpit Records, which is part of the network family, and sometimes you talk about that it has the feel of being both a small boutique label as well as a larger label. Would you expand on that interesting thought?
Yeah, network, I feel like people in the music business know who Network is, what label that is, and it's the home to Sarah McLachlan and the Weepies and the Cardigans, some of my favorites, and they have smaller labels that are attached to them, like
Parasites. Right?
Exactly. We're a parasite.
Right.
Bully Pulpit is the parasite. And you started Bully Pulpit and knew the guys at Network and worked that out. So it really does. It feels like I'm on a smaller label with the clout of a larger label. All of our decisions have to go through Network. And I feel like I'm really protected because I'm working with you and you've got my best interest in mind and you've been in this business for a long time and I have no idea anything. I don't know anything about the music business, so I'm just like, what?
We have all kinds of crazy ideas that we all like bounce off of each other, and some of them we all shut down, some of them we like, some of them so it's very collaborative, the three parties.
Yes, and there's a lot of freedom, and I think for an artist, there is more freedom on Network and Bully Pulpit than there is on most labels.
For instance, you designed the cover of your album in collaboration with...
Well, and that's one thing is John, who does the design, who does the artwork at Network, who did all the albums for Sarah McLachlan. He's done some stuff for Avril Lavigne, and he's a really gifted artist. But he doesn't know me. We'd never met, and he, it was very early on in the signing process, and I hadn't been on the label for very long, so we'd never met. And he sent me a couple mock-ups of designs for an album cover, and I just did not like them at all. And
they were good. It just
they just great.
weren't you.
Yeah, they just weren't me. They were
John,
totally
they were
great.
good. They
were
just
great.
weren't her.
But the thing, and the first thing in my head was like, he just doesn't know me. He doesn't know what my style is. He doesn't know what I like, what I don't like. And it's not that he's a bad artist. He's a great artist. He just doesn't know me. And so the day I got them, I was just like, oh, I need to do something different. I want to show him more what I'm like. So I mocked up, and luckily, I've been working with Photoshop for years, so I know kind of how to work that a little bit. So I mocked up an idea for the cover, and I just sent it off to him, and I sent him a couple mock-ups, and I said, I'd love to go like more in this direction. I don't want to step on your toes. I love what you've done, but it's just not my style. This is more my style. And he said, I love it. Let's keep it. And after that, he changed the font a tiny bit so it fit with the fonts they had or whatever, and just cleaned it up, but kept my design. And then after that, he designed the rest of the CD, and it was perfect. Like it was better than I could have designed, because now he knew my style. So, but it was great. I was like, sweet. I got to design my own album cover.
And the back of the album, I remember choosing that photo. There were three of us. It was my assistant Laura and you and I, and we'd send emails bouncing photos back and forth, and we all kind of had to agree on one.
Right.
And we got there eventually. But I thought that was a really interesting collaborative process.
That we all had a say. A lot of labels don't give their artists a say. They just make it.
This interview is feeling very self-promotional in many ways, don't you think? We should switch gears now.
Sure. I don't know.
And be more journalistic.
I like self-promotion.
So, what was the word? No, never mind. I'm not going to ask anything very difficult for you. But you've been on tour now with Fiction Family, with just Switchfoot's John Foreman, as well as Sean Watkins from
Nickel Creek.
Yeah. What is that like? Because their music, it's a really, it's a hybrid of the two artists in a way.
Yeah, it's like a hybrid of John's solo stuff, which is really singer-songwritery.
No.
Writery. Singer-songwritery. And Sean Watkins, Nickel Creek, they're bluegrass, and Sarah was out on the tour too. So, Sean's sister, and Sarah's also in Nickel Creek, and she plays fiddle. And they had a full band with them, so they had full drum kit, and then Tyler played bass and keys and the baby piano, the toy piano, and sang like all sorts of things. So it was a crazy kind of conglomeration, and their fans, that's a crazy group too, bringing them all together. But it was so great. I just got back, and I was only out with them for a week, and it was my first like real tour outside of California, where I didn't set all the shows up, and I was opening for a band that brought in a good crowd, and we played to 300 to 600 people every night, and most of our shows were sold out. And they were by far some of the best shows I've ever played. And I played solo, which kind of made me nervous because I haven't played a lot solo, and I kind of like having somebody else with me to kind of cover up my mistakes. But I thought it would be a really good thing for me to do, to go out and just try it. I need to be able to play by myself and not rely on people all the time. And so I did, and it was awesome, and it was so fun. And I found in playing solo a really big thing with my live show. It's really important for me to be able to communicate with the audience. And if I can play my songs and get through my songs and communicate with the audience through my songs, awesome. But if I can communicate with them through like between songs and really connect with them there, then my show's 100% better. And it really makes a difference. And I played a show last night where the audience was really chatty, and the stage was really big, and the sound was kind of off, and so I really had trouble connecting with the audience and didn't really get good feedback from them. And my show, I didn't like my show at all. I didn't enjoy it. I got off stage and I was like, I suck. What am I doing, know? But this audience that was on, there for Fiction Family, they were there to be entertained, and they were there to be quiet and listen and communicate with the artist. And I had some of the best shows ever because I had these great responsive people responding to me in between songs, during songs, and there was just so much energy in the crowd, and it was just amazing.
Well, that crowd,
enough good things.
That crowd responded really well to you that night that I saw the Fiction Family tour. But they're really not there to see you, right? They were really there to see Fiction Family.
Right, so it's a challenge.
So how, you had to win them over then.
Right, and that's like immediately I walk out on stage, I'm always a little nervous for the first song. And granted, that last show we played was sold out, had been sold out for a couple weeks. And there were, I think the room holds 250 or 300 people, and it was pitch black. So I think a lot of that would make a lot of artists uncomfortable because you can't connect, you can't see the people. And at first it did a little bit for me, but then the light caught my guitar, and so I was able to like shine the light off of my guitar onto a couple of the people in the audience. So I immediately made the connection with those people. So you're picking up guys by
shining the guys in the front row.
Right.
Classy.
Right, that's the way I like to do it. It works. And so like that ended up working out great for me. And you know, that's the thing, is going on tour with them is like they've got this great like solid fan base, and they're really like their fans are really gracious people. You know, it's funny that you can say that about a band's fans, that they're a certain type of people, but they really are. They're really gracious. And I got up on stage and I was like, shoot, my first show in Seattle, I was like, all right, show was sold out. I was like, it was like 316 people, I think, or 17 people, and I had no idea what to expect. And here I am walking on a stage playing solo for the first time in years, and to a bunch of people I don't know. I mean, granted, there was like a handful of people that I knew. It
was like myself and my wife and two other guys from the label.
Well, this is another show. This is the first show of the tour.
I'm not LA, but that was a pretty non-Molly Jenson crowd.
Right, and so is that. All the crowds were. But I just, my goal was just to connect. And actually, the funny thing about my first show is that there was a friend, a musician friend from San Diego. His name's Trevor Davis. He and his wife were up there playing shows, and they came to that show, and I didn't know he was there. And this guy, like right after my first song, I start talking to the audience, and this guy started making this like funny, goofy laugh, and I was like, who are you? And we kind of started communicating back and forth, talking back and forth, and I'm like, I said like I was from San Diego, and he's like, something like really obnoxious. And I was like, oh, you're from San Diego? And then I kind of said something mean. I was like, do you have a girlfriend? I'm not asking for me. I just don't think you probably would have a girlfriend with a laugh like that. Like, just rude. I was totally rude, which is not my goal at all. And I felt really bad afterwards. And I saw him. I was like, oh my gosh, can't believe you're here. We were talking, and I was like, gosh, I got to go find that guy. I hope he doesn't think I was being rude. And he was like, that was me. I thought we were connecting. I thought we were like having a moment. And I was like, oh, at least it was you. So you know I wasn't being rude.
What was that call again? Can you do that again?
No, it was
Is it a San Diego
obnoxious
thing?
It's just a San Diego thing, like that. But
on that
really
note,
really loud.
We'll be back in just a moment. We'll work on the bird calls during the break and come back in just a moment on the Bully Pulpit Show. Stay tuned.
For the first time, the ability to turn back the clock hands of biological time has recently been demonstrated in a human being. The prospect of being able to become biologically young again is tantalizing. A new 8-minute film explores this new discovery.
And we're back on the Bully Pulpit Show with one more episode with Molly Jenson. So Molly, I'd like to admit to one racial prejudice here, which is that I tend to think that black performers are better at performing than white performers. And I know that's a stereotype, but I wonder if it couldn't be because so many of my favorite black performers had a start in the church, and they played all these years growing up, teenage years, and they got their chops down, whereas it tends to happen less traditionally in more white churches. I know you've had a background playing in a similar way in churches. How do you think that's affected your performance and the way you handle crowds?
I think it's been really good for me. I started singing at church when I was 15, and I was so nervous. I actually have a tape of me singing at church, and my voice is just like super shaky, and it's hideous. But being able to start at such a young age really helped me to be in front of people and be on stage. And even though you're not supposed to think of it as a performance time, it kind of is, because you're on stage in front of all these people, and usually a lot of people. and it just gets, you know, got me used to being in front of people and not being nervous in front of people. And I still get nervous when when I have to do new things, but I don't stay nervous for very long. And I really, really think that's because of singing in church growing up.
And what about going forward? What kind of artists would you like to, in your dream scenario, tour with on the road?
Oh gosh. Well, I have to say, after touring with Fiction Family, I've got high expectations now. I've found that the best rooms and the best crowds for me are the like theater style seating rooms and the crowds that come because they want to listen. And I've always been the kind of person who's like, oh, if they're chatty, I'm gonna just make it work, and I do that. But I know the shows that I enjoy most are when people are really there to listen and communicate. But I would love I'd love to go on tour with the Cardigans. I really love the Cardigans. I'd love to go on tour. Any sort of like, I mean, they've got like a mellower side the Cardigans do, but they're also full band. But I would, you know, I've only done like either solo tour or I've played like with a couple other members from my band. I'd love to go on a full band tour with like a bigger band, you know, like the Cardigans or like, I don't know. Now, of course, now that we're on camera, I can't think of any of the bands that I would like to go on tour with.
The Weepies?
The Weepies, they never tour. They're not big touring people, but I'd love to tour. I'd love to tour with the Weepies.
What about Sheryl Crow?
Yeah, I'd love it. Basically, if you name an artist, pretty much I'm going to say yes.
Motley Crue?
Sure. Keep coming. Now you're trying to think.
Yeah, I don't want to.
Yeah, I just want to tour, and that's what I want to do.
And
so.
You've been with different artists before in different bands. You like touring, don't you?
I love it. Yeah, you know, I was with the band for a little while, and we toured. We toured like crazy one year. We did 300 shows in a year, just crazy. But we stayed at people's houses, and when I was with that band, I was 20, and it was perfect for me. But now that I'm a little older, staying in people's houses, like just on this Fiction Family tour, I was only gone for 5 days, but I stayed with 2 people, and both friends. It was a great situation. But I just would much rather stay in a hotel. I've realized as I've grown older that, like, gosh, the old Molly, the younger Molly, I guess I should say, really loved staying at people's houses and meeting new people and being really chatty all night and singing, you know, like crazy songs that would just, I don't know how I didn't lose my voice, especially singing for that long. But now, like, I went on tour with, you know, for a week and I lost my voice because I was talking too much. So I found I have more boundaries now that I'm older.
Good, boundaries are good. You know, when I was a kid, I used to listen to Casey Kasem, Top 40. Did you ever listen to Casey Kasem? That was after your time, wasn't it?
No, should I admit that?
Yeah, one day he was introducing Debbie Boone's You Light Up My Life, which was like 13 weeks at #1 in 78. And he said this is a courageous performance. At the time, I always thought that was kind of an odd thing to say, but then as I got older, I thought it was kind of a courageous performance by her. She was like an 18-year-old girl, and this was her first big thing, and it was a huge hit. And something about her vocals was courageous. And I've thought about I'm Sorry for Me, which is one of the great songs on your album. There's something very, in a similar way, kind of courageous about it, to say, not only the theme, but the vocals, but to kind of apologize for yourself. And yet you're not really sorry for yourself, but you're saying, I'm sorry that I didn't turn out to be the person you wanted me to be.
Right.
What is it about that song that strikes something deep, I think, in people?
I don't know. I think it's just, that actually was the first song I wrote for the album. And I wrote it right before a relationship that I was in, right before it ended. And it was at that point where, actually I started writing it right before it ended and then finished it after it ended. So I just felt I really wanted, I broke up with a guy and he just didn't understand why. And I really wanted to change places with him because I knew why, and I just didn't have any feelings anymore, and I knew it wasn't the right situation to be in, and I wanted, because he was hurting so much, I wanted to write a song to be like, look, I'd love to change places with you, and I would love to be in the place where you're at. because it's not fair that I'm not, and it's not fair that you have to be there by yourself. And I think that hits people because so many people have been there, so many people have felt that way, and you know, there's a song, you know, now there's a song out there to kind of talk about it. And
for all those people to listen to.
For all those people.
We're going to do another episode with all of your former boyfriends who inspired these songs. We're just going to line them up right here.
Great. They're all married.
They're all married?
Can we bring their wives too?
But they might ask for royalty checks for
No,
being the
that's not
inspiration
let them
for these
in it.
songs.
No, they don't. They've put me through enough pain. They don't get royalty checks.
What's on the horizon for you? You have a record coming out very soon, and it'll maybe already be out by the time people see this. Are we start working on the next record? What are we?
Yeah, well, I want to tour, so hopefully 2009 will be the year of touring for Molly J. And I want to start working on my next record. I've already started, actually. I have a couple songs ready to go, and but I just need to kind of sit down, get in the studio, and get going.
And you did a video with Greg Lasswell for your first for Give It Time.
For Give It Time, yes.
I think you were also, as I remember, I forgot to talk about, you were in the freshman survival kit. So you had like 75,000 freshmen got your song for free, or a download, right?
Yeah, that was great.
Did you ever hear back from any of them?
No. Not
one?
No.
Boy, people are so ungrateful these days. A free song and nobody thanked you.
I'm fine.
We'll talk about the next record a little bit more. You have a song, a couple of songs already done.
Yeah.
And what will be the process? You'll go back with Greg, I think.
Yeah, definitely. All ready for that, for this next record. I'm already writing more. Like I went to Greg with 2 songs that were pretty much, they weren't pretty much done, but they were much closer to being done than the rest of the songs we worked on. So he didn't have to help as much, but he helped enough to kind of get the song done and make it sound better. Definitely helps make songs better. And so I think this process, there'll be a lot more of me. I will be writing a lot more than I did in this last time. And because, you know, after working with him for one record, I've kind of learned how to write. And I still struggle and I still get stuck here and there. And I need opinions to kind of help me hash out where I'm getting stuck, and that's what he does for me. But he's definitely helped me to become a better writer, so I'll definitely be writing more. And then we'll do the same thing, probably. We'll get together, finish up some songs, and immediately record them. It just works best for us.
I remember the first time we talked about doing a record, and you said, does that mean I can't work with Greg anymore? And I said, are you crazy? Don't ruin a good thing.
Right, I remember that. It made me so happy.
You have an amazing collaboration with him, don't you?
Yeah, we really connect with him more than with anybody. And John and I connect really well, but there's just something, Greg and I we just really connect with writing. It's been really great.
Well, good luck with the record.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining us on the Bully Pulpit Show, and we'll see you next time with another interesting and maybe controversial guest. We'll see you then.